Alrighty, glad to have you back. Hey, that was a fun few minutes, huh? Did you go and get the Visual Studio 2005 C++ Express Edition and all of its, however many megabytes it is these days, all of its size downloaded and installed and updated, and maybe you had a couple of reboots in there. Sometimes that has to happen as it gets itself into order and loaded. Well, good. Let's see if all of that work you just did actually functions or not. What we're going to do is we're going to start the Express Edition Visual Studio, and then we're going to create a project. We're going to create a Common Language Runtime project, a CLR, and that's Microsoft's implementation of the CLI standard, which is a way for multiple languages, because you see how many languages Visual Studio supports. This is a way for those languages to be able to depend on one another and to pass data between each other. So if you're part of a development team that somebody wants to create in J# or C# or somebody else wants to do Visual Basic, if they select the CLR, the Common Language Runtime, then things will be loaded properly and each of you can call the other's functions and you can share information and share blocks of code between each other. We'll give the project a name, call it Hello World, and then we will run our little project because it'll already have Hello World in it. They know what you want to do for your first program, so they're going to put that in there. And we'll run it without debug, and that's Control F5, or I'll show you where it is on the menus. So let me switch out here. Let me bring up my all programs, and then I need to drop way down here to Visual Studio because it doesn't go into Microsoft. It goes under Visual C++ 2005 Express Edition down here. And then there's the command prompt, and you probably, if you went through the C programming course with me, you remember that's where we got our command prompt from. We never went into the IDE. So now we're going to go into the integrated development environment and fire it off. So that's this guy here. So that's our Express Edition. We'll start it up, and that's what it should look like. I reset my menu so that it would look the same as yours should look the first time you run it. And I don't like this Solution Explorer pinned open, so I'm going to click that off so we have a little more space to work with in here. So now all we need to do is create a new project. If we drag that down just a little bit, you can probably see it if you're on a 1024 by 768 screen, but I need to drop this down a little bit so I can find Create. I can do a Create Project in here, or I can come up here and I can do a File, New Project. Either way, you're going to get to the same place. And that's right here. That's a new project. Now you may not have Win32 available in your Visual C++ set. That takes yet another download from Microsoft from that very same site that you were in, which gives you a software development kit and a series of libraries and such to be able to call on the Win32 code. We want the CLR anyway, and you should definitely have that in your toolkit there under Visual C++. We're just going to make a console application because we're more worried about the language than we are about making pretty forms and text fields and all that sort of thing. We're going to deal more with the C++. So that we'll just make a CLR console application which will pop up in a black screen. We come over here and we need to enter a name, and we'll just call it Hello World. And we'll say OK, and you can see where it's going to put it in your Visual Studio 2005 projects, and I'll let it create a directory for that, and it starts doing its thing, and there we go. So here is our first C source that it created. This is helloworld.cpp, and that's the way these files are named. That's a C++ file, and we'll talk about all these other things, namespaces, and this is a Microsoft thing here, but that's okay. We'll get that as well. But here is our main function. Remember in C, you always had to have a main function. Well, that doesn't change. And we have a nice little WriteLine class, which is going to be used, and it's part of our WriteLine method that's used out of the console class. And this is so nice about Microsoft. When you drop your cursor over a word, it tells you where this thing came from. It's a reference to class system console sealed abstract, and that's the standard input output and error streams. Cannot be inherited because it's an abstract and so on. We'll get into all that. Don't worry about that. But there's WriteLine, and that tells you all the possible interfaces that can be used to WriteLine, the different things that can pass into it. You see the first one there is void. The next one has a Boolean value. I can't point at those because it'll go away, but there's WriteLine void, WriteLine Boolean value, There's a wide character T value. So these are all interfaces to the write line, so that write line can take in different kinds of parameters. What we're going to give it is this hello world string right here, and then we're going to return 0 and get out of there. So we'll fill in all the details on this stuff as we go through here, and we talk about the language a little more. But as you can see, it's not really too different from what we know in C already. And if you don't know C, that's cool. That you don't have to. We already talked about that. So to start this thing, we come up here to debug and click that. And what we want to do is start without debugging. And I'll show you why here as we go. But that's Control F5 for when you're doing iterative programming and you want to make a few changes and run it through its paces real quick. It's just easier to do a Control F5. So we're going to start without debugging, and then watch this lower window down here. The output window showed up, and there you can see the compile process, the linking process. It succeeded, nothing failed, everything's up to date, nothing was skipped. And there's our hello world. And now press any key to continue. That's because we ran it without debug. So the program has finished and it stops. And since it's a command line program, the IDE understands that we might want to see what came out before it goes running off. So it gives us a press any key to continue, and we can do that. If we do a debug, start debugging F5, we don't have any breakpoints set. It'll flash hello world and then leave again because we didn't tell it to stop any place. So it just ran right on through. Okay, if you can get yours to do that, and hopefully if you downloaded everything that they asked you to and you put it all in there, then good. You're set. Our next video will make a modification to this program and make sure that we can make changes and save the files and so on, and then rerun it. So we'll do that here in our next video.